Welcome to InFocus, a closer look at human relations. I'm your host, Bill Bell. This show is supported by the Cincinnati Human Relations Commission. Today, our guest is Abby Schwartz. She's from the Skirball Museum in Cincinnati. Ms. Schwartz, welcome to our show.
Great to be here.
And I guess the first question is, what is the Skirball? Am I saying that right?
Yes, Skirball Museum. Yes.
Can you tell us what that museum is?
Sure. It's a Jewish museum on the campus of Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion in Clifton. And it is really the first Jewish museum to have established itself in this country.
Really?
Yeah, as early as 1875 when Hebrew Union College was founded, that's 140 years ago this year, a library began to be formed and objects began to be collected, and in 1913 the museum opened as the Union Museum on the campus, and gradually grew, and larger collections were acquired, and in 1990 the museum occupied the current space that we're in now in Mayerson Hall on the campus of Hebrew Union. And it is now named the Skirball Museum, named for benefactors who helped to make the museum possible.
Okay, I'm going to go back.
Sure.
Hebrew Union College.
Yeah.
Okay, where is that?
It's on Clifton Avenue,
Okay.
Right next to Good Samaritan Hospital.
Okay, and
Yeah.
is the school? Can you talk about the school?
Sure.
I know you the museum's there, but
Yes. The school is its reason for being is really the rabbinical college. This is the seminary that trains rabbis for the reform movement in America and abroad. It is a liberal, Reform Judaism is a liberal form of Judaism, and it was founded by Rabbi Isaac Mayer Wise. So we're right now in City Hall, and right across the street is Plum Street Temple, which was the synagogue where he was the rabbi, and among other things, he founded the college and the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, now known as the Union of Reform Congregations. He founded several different sorts of institutions that were intended to advance American Judaism in particular.
so why do you use the term reform, or why is that in that?
Well, reform again is one of the branches of Judaism. If you
Okay.
think of sort of the major areas of Jewish life, reform, conservative, orthodoxy, and there are others. There's Reconstructionist. There are things that move more to the right, more to the left, but Reform Judaism is a liberal form of Judaism that really sort of had its roots in 19th century Germany,
Okay.
and found its way to America through people like Isaac Mayer Wise, who were seeking a form of Judaism that could help American Jews to be Americans and Jews and assimilate easily into this new culture.
Okay, so that's
Sweeping generalizations, but I think it gives you a
well,
little
it gives
bit
us
of
a
the
little
flavor.
bit of idea. So in terms of the Skirball Museum, which is part of the campus,
Yes.
that came into existence
Right.
because
It came into existence because, well, really, the way museums form is very interesting in and of
Okay.
itself. You know, when a campus, a college is founded and a library starts to emerge, and then there are people who live in the community who suddenly say, oh, well, I have all these old books, and I have all these things that, were my parents that I don't really have a place for. Let's give them to the library. Let's give them to the museum. So you start to acquire things sort of piecemeal.
Okay.
And then the idea is that if you have an educational institution, an institution of higher learning, you want to have institutions there that people can avail themselves of, that are going to help them to understand the experience of Jewish life in America, in Europe, and so collections began to be sought, and major collections were purchased or given to the museum that allow us to tell the story of Jewish existence from ancient times to the present.
Okay.
So, for instance, our core exhibition, which is called An Eternal People, the Jewish Experience, it actually starts with the story of immigration, which
Really?
is not linear because, of course, our history goes back nearly 6,000 years. But for anybody walking into this museum, all of us came from somewhere else.
Okay.
So it's a common denominator right there, that you walk in and you see these artifacts that were given by families who are from Cincinnati, that tell the story of that immigration first from Eastern Europe, and then first from Germany, and then from Eastern Europe. Two different major waves of immigration in the 19th century that brought Jewish people to America.
All right.
And some of the artifacts are things that might not even seem particularly Jewish. One that comes to mind is a samovar, a Russian samovar.
I'm not sure what that is.
Well, it's a large receptacle. It's for making tea, for making liquid drinks,
Okay.
for housing them and then pouring them. And they are, when I can remember one in the break front of my grandmother's house. I can remember being in other people's homes where this sort of had pride of place. And when people have to leave a country and they have to pack up stuff to bring with them, it's interesting what people choose to bring. And in the case of this samovar from Russia, the family who gave it to the museum recently came and did an interview for us
Really?
where we recorded them. These were the grandchildren of the woman or great-grandchildren of the woman who brought this samovar across the ocean. And they remember her telling about how this was important in their home in Russia, and when they escaped the pogroms of the late 19th century and came to America, this is something they wanted to have with them. So it's dented, it doesn't stand exactly straight, but it's sort of a symbol of this wave of immigration that brought people here. Other people might bring candlesticks or a cup for sanctifying wine on the Sabbath. It's a great exercise to sort of talk to people as we are in this space thinking about immigration, to say, if you had to leave suddenly, what would you take with you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we think about, unfortunately, it's always some type of tragedy that makes a person have to come up with that kind of decision. And typically, in this time, in this country, it's about survival.
Right.
I guess currently we have conflicts across the globe, and there are people who are writing these stories now.
Exactly.
And
Refugees, people, who have to really just escape with what their clothes on their back, but maybe they can take one or two things that are going to remind them of
home.
the life they had.
I guess it would be scary to leave a place and know that
Absolutely.
you're not going back.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely.
So you have a few collections and exhibits.
Yes, we have, as I said, a core collection that deals with really the history of the Jewish people from
Okay.
ancient to contemporary times. It's sort of organized in thematic areas. So as I said, it starts with 19th century immigration. Then there's a section specifically about Cincinnati and the immigration patterns here in this city. There's a section really devoted to Isaac Mayer Wise and his major contributions to the development of the college and the development of Reform Judaism in America. There's a section about archaeology with some very important ancient pieces that really speak to the long history of the Jewish people. There's a section on Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses. This is the center, the core of our Jewish identity. Everything emanates from the words of these books, and it's read weekly in synagogue, and there are beautiful decorative accoutrements that attend the Torah, the cover that you place over this scroll, the different silver objects that you use to or adorn it, and this is all sort of prescribed in the Bible how this was to be done. So that forms the centerpiece of the exhibition. And then there's a section on life cycle events and the the beautiful artwork that attends ceremonies around birth and marriage and coming of age for boys and girls, bar and bat mitzvah, even certain rituals and objects associated with death and dying. And then there's a whole section on holidays that deals with the various holidays throughout the year and the different works of art and artifacts that attend those. There's a section about Holocaust, dark chapter in darkest chapter in the history of the Jewish people, and you emerge from that very dark story to modern Israel and talking about how art developed there and continues to thrive in that country.
Seriously,
So
that
that's
is
in
absolutely.
a nutshell.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
If you're not of that that world, or it's not your area of interest, then you would have no idea.
And even if you are, the reality is that, you take a lot of things for granted, whatever faith-based, whatever faith you come from and whatever your traditions might be. And I think that while we have a fair number of Jewish visitors, a lot of our visitors are non-Jews who are learning about Judaism. But our Jewish visitors are often just as stunned by the breadth of artistic material that there is, and many of the things that are part of our history and our culture that they just sort of took for granted and didn't really pay attention in Sunday school. So,
well, I think that one of the challenges we just have as a society is not understanding the contribution of the people we originate from.
Exactly.
And a museum would allow people to see where their place in this.
Right.
Unfortunately, we tend to talk about the Holocaust a lot.
You're exactly right.
But there's a life beyond that.
Exactly.
And that story is still being written.
Exactly, and that's an important part of the story. But I agree with you. And I think even the recent Pew study identified that what people know about Jews, it's the Holocaust and Israel.
Yeah.
And they don't really know a whole lot else. And I think it's really important for people, all kinds of people, to see this material and learn about it. Because what we find is there are many more points of intersection than there are points of difference when it comes to ritual and observance, and that lots of people, whether they're Jewish or not, find commonality in some of the objects that we have on display, and they find ways to connect it with their own experience, and that's really I think very important, and one of the reasons that it's so exciting to be there.
Now. And I appreciate you being here. So this question is going to be personal.
Okay.
And it's regarding your parents. Were your parents born in Cincinnati, or did they migrate here?
Well, no, actually, I'm a Jersey girl.
Okay. Okay.
So I was born in Newark, New Jersey.
Okay.
And my parents, my father's family, both my parents were born in America.
Okay.
So my father's parents were born in Russia.
Okay.
And came to the United States in the late 19th century. So my dad was born in New Jersey as well.
Okay.
And his family was very involved, and my dad, as a young man, worked after school to help bring other relatives from Eastern Europe, in the period when people were still struggling to get here. This is at the beginning of the 20th century, long before the Holocaust. So we would have often family circle meetings where all these distant cousins would be kissing my father's hands and saying, thank you, Meyer, for helping us get here. We wouldn't be here without you. So as a young boy working after school, he understood that what he earned was going to help family members come to America. So he was really more involved. My mother's family was here longer, so they didn't have any of those issues. And but both of them came from Lithuania, Eastern Europe. So
we have to take a break.
Okay.
So we will. You're watching InFocus, a closer look at human relations, and we'll be back in a moment.
Okay.
Welcome back to InFocus, a closer look at human relations. I'm your host, Bill Bell, and we were speaking with our guest today is Abby Schwartz from the Skirball Museum. And prior to our break, we were just talking about how you came to be. Not how you came to be, but how we got to this point. So if we can focus, I'd like to go back to the museum.
Sure.
And you have, just in reading the notes, there's a upcoming exhibit that is called Chasing Dreams, and it's baseball and becoming American.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So was baseball the American sport, or is football the American sport?
Oh gosh. Well, you're looking at a Yankee fan, so.
So it's baseball, huh?
Well, I'm not gonna pick. I'm pretty into football this year.
This year?
Bengals looking like they're looking. So,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, okay.
I'm good with that.
All right, well, okay. So you get the pass for that.
Yeah.
But tell us about this upcoming exhibit.
This is coming in the spring. I'm gonna put my glasses on so I can read the dates. It opens on April 14th and it's gonna run through July 7th, and it is called Chasing Dreams, Baseball and Becoming American. And it's actually what's called a pop-up show, which means it's mostly panels with information that you read, with a few interactive displays, and it's actually based on a much larger exhibition that was put on and circulated by the National Museum of American Jewish History in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So this show enables us to talk about baseball and how Jewish baseball players came into this national sport.
Okay.
It wasn't easy. There was prejudice, and there were people who were unhappy to see Jews entering the sport, but they prevailed and actually were great role models later on when African Americans were entering the sport of baseball, and for whom these Jewish players were real heroes and really helpful in making that transition easier for them. So it's not just about Jews in baseball, but it really addresses a lot other minorities and how that they made their way into this sport and made a huge difference.
You know, it's an interesting play on words, because baseball, there are stories about integration in baseball.
Right.
And
right.
it's becoming American, which is sort of wild when you think about it.
Yeah.
That, I mean, weren't you American before you joined baseball?
Well, I think it's really that because baseball is such a defining American, identifying sport. It has been described as the national pastime.
Okay.
So when you have something that all Americans care about and think about, and then you start to think about how it wasn't always so easy for certain groups to break into this sport and really look at those stories and look at the way they helped each other and look at the strides they made to bring Jews into baseball, to integrate baseball. It's really very compelling. So this exhibition will explore that. But what's exciting for us in addition is we have recently absorbed a major collection of Jewish art and artifacts from a museum that closed in 2002 in Washington, D.C. It was the B'nai B'rith Klutznick National Jewish Museum, and it was attached to the B'nai B'rith headquarters in Washington. Okay. When they downsized and sold their building, they had to close the museum. Now, there was hope that it would reopen in Washington in a different place, but that never happened, and over time they began to look for a place that could absorb this collection of over 1,500 objects. And one of the places they looked was to us at the Skirball at HUC. And one of the reasons that it was appealing to bring it to the Skirball was that the papers, the documents, the history of the archives of the B'nai B'rith organization were already at the Jacob Rader Marcus Center of the American Jewish Archives, also on the campus of HUC. So they already had a relationship with the archives. They had a sense of, the space that would be available and the capability of the campus to absorb this material. So last May, a great big truck arrived on our campus with all of this art and artifacts. And among them is some great baseball memorabilia, some great baseball cards, of some of the Jewish players. They're very, very valuable. There's some wonderful sculptures by a living American sculptor named Philip Ratner, who's probably best known for some of his work that's around the Statue of Liberty and on Ellis Island.
Okay.
But he did these very modern, very energetic sculptures of Jewish baseball players. So we're going to integrate this exhibition that we're bringing from the National Museum of American Jewish History with some of these objects that are newly part of our collection, and give people sort of a sneak peek at what this collection offers us.
Now, I'm going to move from baseball because you talked about the 5 books of Moses, and there's a question about scrolls. Is that related when it says sacred scrolls?
Sacred scrolls. Okay, so the Torah is written. It's now available. You can get a book that has the same writing that you find on the Torah scrolls. But the Torah scrolls that you would see in a synagogue in the ark on the pulpit that are kept in a closed space and used and read from during the week and on the Sabbath, on certain festivals and holidays. These are on parchment, and they are. It's on a scroll with 2 staves, typically, that you open it each week to the portion that is read for that Sabbath, for instance, and it's the Torah itself. The words of the Torah are. There's no decoration. There's no illumination. There's no page numbers. There's no vowels. This is all written in a prescribed fashion, and you have to know you have to know your Torah to get to the place where you have to read that week. There are certain people, scribes, who are capable of writing out this material, and also if there's damage or something needs to be repaired, they come to your city and they spend time and they do this work. So it's very painstaking, the actual writing of the scroll. But many synagogues have very old ones that have been there in their synagogues for years and years. And it is the sacred writing. It is the basic tenets of our faith that are in those 5 books.
And so at the museum, are there different scrolls in different parts of the country?
There's scrolls in museums. There's scrolls in synagogues. In our museum, we actually have 2 very important Torah scrolls.
Okay.
Both of them are survived the Holocaust.
Okay.
And one of them belonged to a synagogue in Riga, Germany. And a professor at Hebrew Union College was a descendant of the family that had commissioned that Torah for that synagogue.
Okay.
So they had commissioned the scribe to come and write it on the parchment, and it existed in their synagogue. They used it for services. And on the night of on November 9th of 1938, something called Kristallnacht happened. This was the night of broken glass, when the Germans went into synagogues and Jewish shops and burned and looted and broke all the storefront windows and destroyed a lot of the holy objects in the temples. And by sheer serendipity, this particular Torah in this little town of Riga, Germany, was out for repairs.
Wow.
So it escaped being destroyed on that night. And Werner Weinberg, who ended up in the United States as a professor at Hebrew Union College, was able to keep track of this Torah through his long journey. Eventually, he left Germany, was hiding in Amsterdam, was able to find out that the Torah had survived, was able to track it. He went to Bergen-Belsen, a concentration camp, survived Bergen-Belsen,
Wow.
came to America and came to HUC, and was able to retrieve that Torah, and he kept it with him here in Cincinnati. And in 1975, which was the 100th anniversary of the founding of Hebrew Union College, he gave that Torah to the college and to the museum. And so it's now displayed in the central area of our museum. And it's a wonderful reminder of the tenacity of the Jewish people. It's been used by descendants of the family for life cycle events. It's been taken out of its case and sent to California, for instance, for a bar mitzvah of a descendant of Werner Weinberg.
Really?
Yes. So when you think about, all of the pain that attended his family's life, and what this little, it's not so little, but what this Torah went through, it's really symbolic of the resilience of people and the values that they carry, and that these objects, while they can just be understood as objects, are so much more, and they have so much to teach us about moving forward and using something, a negative experience, for good. And most recently, it was used in Plum Street Temple, the synagogue of Isaac Mary Wise, right across the street, when the current president of Hebrew Union College was inaugurated. So that Torah was the Torah that was opened, that was read from on that Sabbath, and it was listed in the book that this was the Torah that Werner Weinberg lovingly tracked and got back after all those years.
After that.
Yeah, so it is a very symbolic Torah, and the other one has an equally interesting story, but it's just one artifact that, again, if we think about why is this important, this is old stuff. You get a sixth grade class that comes through the museum. Why is this meaningful to them? But when you tell this story, and they think about themselves maybe a year from now reading from Torah for their bar bat mitzvah, and understanding all the history that attends that moment in their life, I think we can sometimes make a dent and help them to appreciate its meaning. And as I said, non-Jews are very compelled by these stories. They really, it's a learning experience for everyone.
I can tell you, I've been on the edge of my seat. Unfortunately, our viewers don't get an opportunity to listen to the breaks, but during the breaks we have we have some very educational and spirited conversations about that, and time just doesn't allow that. We are coming to the end of our time together. But before we go, I'd like to ask you to just give the address of the Skirball Museum.
Sure.
And any contact information. And for anyone who may be interested in donating or wanting to support the museum, if you can give that information out, it'd be appreciated.
Sure. So we are at 3101 Clifton Avenue.
Okay.
As I said, it's right next to Good Samaritan Hospital. The Skirball Museum itself is in Mayerson Hall, which is on the immediate left as you enter the campus. We are open on Tuesdays, on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. and on Sundays from 1 to 5. But we're also open by appointment. And the number to call to schedule a tour or to learn any more details about it is area code 513-487-3098. And in terms of becoming active or volunteering, we are expanding our docent program. We're really trying to bring more volunteers into our fold. So the phone number for that would be area code 513-487-3053, and that's my direct line. So I'm happy to talk to anybody who's interested in either supporting the museum or with volunteer time or in any other way.
Okay, well, Ms. Abby Schwartz, thank you for
so
coming in.
Nice to meet you, Bill.
Meet
this was delightful.
All right, and thank you. You've been watching InFocus, a close look at human relations, and we'll see you next time.